guys, Yip's coming out with another video, and this one's going to be about simcraft and utilizing that tool to show you guys how to perform better as a warlock. Not only perform better as a warlock, but also, manage your stat weights, as you can't just go off what a site says for stat weights, because your stat weights change relative when you get gear. And what I mean by that is, when you get more mastery, crit will start becoming better. If you don't have enough haste, haste will become really good, and it kind of shows you how much these, variables, the stat weights change depending on how much you have. It's certainly not linear. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to download the simcraft third-party program. It's just, an exe that you just download off their website. I'll put a link in the description below for the simcraft thing. And then also you have to download an add-on for your in-game character to where you can use it to export your character into the simcraft, and you can run a simulation based off your character's in-game current gear and setups to make it quickly easy for you to switch those things up and run different sims. So I'm currently going to be simming my warlock. I'm going to be using my best gear. This is the gear I've determined to be the best based off running multiple simulations with a bunch of different gears, switching them around, checking the itemization, checking the scaling factors and things like that. And so the stats that I'm running currently are 20% crit, 19% haste, and 118% mastery. So these are really good stats for an Affliction Warlock, obviously. And so yeah, I'm going to show you guys how to use that really quick. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to type /simc into your chat box, and we'll bring up this. Now this is the add-on. All you do is you copy it with Control-C, and then once you've done that, you want to go over to the third-party exe, which looks like this. It's gonna, start you on this welcome page, and all you have to do is you have to go to the simulate tab on the top. You open a new simulation with the plus tab, and then you just Control V into the simulation thing, and then you're gonna be able to simulate it down here. Now I've already simmed profiles just in preparation for this video, so I'm going to show you what this simulation looks like. So once it's all done simming and things like that, this is the page that it's going to bring you to. Now when it brings you to this page, you're going to see a lot of data here. A lot of different things are going to show up. It's going to maybe be confusing at first, but I'm just going to kind of walk you through it and show you the important things and highlight what I believe to be important. So obviously it shows you your DPS. That's probably the least important thing that it shows you with regards to changing your character in game, but it is important to note this is what your DPS should be on a single target fight. Obviously you can change that. This is just doing a dry sim without any options changed, and I'll show you guys how to configure the options after I go through this page here. So this is your DPS. It shows you at the top. It shows you the percent error, so the error is relatively small. It shows you the range. It's a fairly high range, but as you can see, it's fairly bell curved. So the variance is pretty good on this. And yeah, it just shows you the talents that you put in with this, which are the talents I was running in game. It shows you your artifact, how many points you have. It accounts for your relic artifact traits. Everything that you have it shows up here. So here are the scaling factors. So what the scaling factors are is this shows you the current stat weights for your character. Now you want to be looking at this normalized stat weight, as it's just slightly easier to kind of understand. Obviously, you can look at this. They're all basically the same thing. Obviously, the scale deltas and the errors and stuff like that you can ignore, but the scale factors and the normalized factors, as well as the ranking, are generally the things you want to be looking at. So if you have an add-on like pawn, like these numbers here in the normalized are going to be what you're wanting to input into that add-on. So you can see here, crit has a 1.25 value for me, mastery has a 1.24, haste has a 1.13, intellect has a value of 1 because it normalizes it around intellect. All that means is it makes intellect have a base value of 1, and then everything else is scaled off that. So you see in a scaled factor, int has 11.56, but crit has a 14.41, but when you divide everything by 11.56, you get this. Spell power is slightly lower than intellect, and then followed by versatility. So you see the ranking, crit is approximately equal to mastery, which is reflected here, which is greater than haste, which is greater than int. Now I'm going to show you kind of what happens if you change that. So obviously if I was to get more crit, this value would go down. I promise you, if I was to get more crit, the value of crit would become less than mastery, and that's why it's really important for you to be constantly simming your character every single time you get a new piece of gear, because these values change. And if you want more proof that these values change, you can check any Affliction Warlock guide, and it will say mastery is greater than crit. But once you hit a certain percentage of mastery, you want that crit and you want that haste, because those things really amplify the damage that your dots are doing when they're at that higher level. So the next important thing to kind of look after that is this is, the DPS chart of the DPS that you should be doing on the fight. So it shows, at the start when you pop Bloodlust, you should be peaking, pretty high. After Bloodlust, it starts to dip down, then you ramp back up a little bit, and then down and up. So it just shows you, what your DPS should be going throughout the fight. And this is simming, I think, a 250-second fight. I'll have to go in and check that, but you can change the length of the fight, and I'll show you how to do that later. But this just shows you, throughout the fight, you're peaking during Lust, then you go down after Lust, and then you go back up, using some more cooldowns and so on. But it's relatively flat, especially being an Affliction Warlock. Obviously, when the boss gets below 20%, which what it's accounting for here, is when your Doom Bolt is hitting a lot harder from your Doom Guard. This pie chart is really, really good to look at because it shows you the relative damage of everything. It has your agonies, it has your effigy damage, it has your unstable affliction damage, it has your procs on your unstable affliction, so the fatal echoes here. It accounts for that as well. Corruption, Doomguard. So this pie chart is really, really important to look at because it shows you the relative percents of damage that your ability should be doing. So on a fight, you can compare your damage with this and be like, okay, my agony damage was, only 15% of my damage on that boss fight when it really should have been 21% according to this figure, and of course that's single target. So you can say, oh, I probably didn't have enough agony uptime on that fight, I need to improve on that, and this is what this pie chart is kind of good for. It also shows you the damage per execute time. So the amount of time that you're spending executing an ability, it shows the relative damage you get out of it, which is really important. So it shows you that every time, I press agony, I'm getting about this much worth of DPS. Able and Stable Affliction, every time I cast one, I'm getting about this much worth. Obviously, Corruption is very high because I only cast it once in the fight because I'm running a talent, Absolute Corruption. And so it just shows you the relative DPS of what you should be doing. So this is kind of a good indicator of like when ads come out, what you should be prioritizing your damage. Obviously, Agony, Corruption, Unstable Affliction are going to be doing the most per global, and then Siphon Life, and then Drain Life. So this is kind of just a priority thing. The important thing to look after that would be down here. If you really, really want to analyze it, it shows you the DPS that each ability is doing. So obviously Agony is doing a lot, Corruption is doing a lot, Deadly Grace is doing a lot. It just shows you the numbers of the DPS, so you can take a look at that if you want to know how much DPS each ability that you're pressing is actually doing. You see Unstable Affliction does quite a bit, and then your Pet's Doom Bolt as well. Other important things to note, so those are the main things that are important. The other important things to note is if you have trinket procs or things like that, you can kind of go into buffs, and this is another important thing to look at in your logs. You can tell how well your buffs are performing relative to a sim. So it sees blood for you should be getting around 2.8 uses on a fight that's 250 seconds long. Shows you how many roughly compounding horror procs you get. The uptime on your Deadwind Harvester is shown here. So it just kind of goes through everything here and shows you the uptime of your relative procs and stuff. So if you're having less than this or higher than this, you can relate it back and forth and see, what you're doing wrong. It shows, 1 Bloodlust, obvious, 2 Deadly Grace, your Temptation, which is your ring, well, my ring anyways, and your Tormented Souls and things like that. So it kind of just shows you how everything works together, and yeah, so this is a really great tool. Simming your character, make sure you're getting those stat weights, make sure you're checking the relative damage numbers that you're doing, and I'm going to show you guys the danger of just using the highest item level gear now. So I'm going to go back in game really quickly. So we're going to go back to game capture, and the danger that you're going to have with gearing is you don't just want to equip the highest stuff that you have. And what I mean by that is I'll show you. So I kind of made a retard strength build here to where this is my highest item level that I can achieve right now, 888. Obviously it says 892, but that's just because I have a few more legendaries. I can't, switch it around, but this is 892 gear. Okay, this is the highest I can put in every single slot that I've tried. I cannot get higher item level than this if I was to put it all in. These are my stats. I'm going to show you guys the sim of this and show you how much DPS I lose even though the item level is 3 higher. So I did run a sim on that before making this video. So go back to the display, and here. So you see my DPS went down by 30,000 even though the item level is way higher. That just shows you how important these stat weights are, how important these secondary stats are, and how important trinkets and things like that are. So it's always important to make sure you're simming your character after you get a new piece of gear, and it's also super important to realize never just equip the highest item level piece of gear that you have, because you really want to focus on what I was showing you before, these scale factors. Really important. Every time you get a new piece of gear, every time you put in a enchant in, every time you put in a gem in, you want to be running this program to see how your secondary stats are shifting their weights, because I'm going to tell you right now, they're always changing every single piece of gear that you get. And it makes sense that they change for every new piece of gear that you get, because your character is going to be, it's not, your character is not linear. It is, a bunch of variables put in, and it's going to shoot out different numbers every time. Now, I'm going to show you how to, kind of change your simulation and how to get these scale factors and things like that. So when you want to change what type of simulation you're running, you go to options, and you go to the first one I do is scaling. So this shows you your scale stats. It doesn't automatically run this. You have to enable this yourself, and it's really easy to do. All you do before you run your simulation is you go into options and scaling, and you click enable scaling, and then you click toggle all character stats. And what this is going to do is when you run your sim, it's going to show you your character stat weights. If you don't have this enabled, it won't show them, so make sure you're enabling this. It will make the simulation take a lot longer to run, probably about 5 to 10 minutes compared to about 1 or 2 minutes. So make sure you have this enabled. The next thing that I wanted to go over was in globals, you can change the length of the fight. So you can change the length, from, I have it currently at 250 seconds, you can change it all the way up to 600 seconds, so, depending on what boss encounter you're doing, you can change the relative time on that. And then also the fight style, so you can do patchwork, you can do add cleave, you can do light movement, heavy movement, things like that. I just always have it on patchwork because I don't really trust, what does light movement mean? It's fairly vague and things like that. So that's about my knowledge on simcraft. It's fairly basic, but it's definitely a good program to have in your arsenal for wanting to, push higher damage numbers, see what's going on here, and see what your trinkets should be doing. Obviously, I do not recommend using simcraft or anything like that to sim trinkets, because trinkets tend to be fairly inaccurate unless they're just stat-based trinkets. Proc trinkets and things like that don't tend to work so well with simcraft, especially when playing a warlock. So I would say don't go off simcraft for most trinkets. You want to be testing those on your own and just kind of coming up with a general consensus about which trinkets are better. So yeah, that's how to use simcraft. I'll post the link for downloading the simcraft web engine and also the add-on in the description. I hope you guys like this video. I hope it helped you, and I hope that you guys use this to further boost your DPS in raids. So yeah, thanks for watching.